with faith and with friendship and the deepest respect, you are now my Speaker, and let the great debate begin. I now have the high honor and distinct privilege to present to the House of Representatives our new Speaker, the gentleman from Georgia, Newt Gingrich.
Wow, that was former House Majority Leader Democrat Dick Gephardt handing the Speaker's gavel to Newt Gingrich. Remember that, following his historic performance for Republicans in the 1994 midterm elections. Now, nearly 2 decades later, the country is still feeling the effects of that seismic shift in power. And joining us now, we have an old friend of yours, Joe, right?
Yeah.
Former chair of the National Republican Congressional Committee and a longtime advisor to Newt Gingrich, Joe Gaylord. Together, they are co-authors of a new book about those 1994 midterms entitled March to the Majority, the Real Story of the Republican Revolution. So how'd you guys meet?
Well, so in December of '93, Joe put on these campaign management schools, so I had to lie. I told him I was a campaign manager. And so we go through the whole thing. At the end, I say, well, I'm actually not. I'm running for office. He goes, I know that. And I said, well, what campaign manager should I get? And Joe said, don't bother, you'd eat them alive.
Oh,
right?
Wow.
But I always say this, Joe, like, seriously, 90% of the advice I'm still giving 30 years later, I'm giving from that campaign school in '93 and all the advice that you and everybody else gave. It was an extraordinary school.
Well, thanks very much. Joe, you were an extraordinary student at the school. I think you had the most interesting campaign in the country in 1994. I remember your 2 half-hour videos that you put on public television stations and ran them continually into cycles 24 hours a day. And that was the heart of your campaign. And you said to me, this is a great technique to use because people wake up all during the day and night, and they turn on something on television and they get to see me. And you've never disappointed in that regard.
And we ran it 24 hours a day for the last couple of weeks because it was like $30 for a half hour because nobody watched it, but it was on Channel 6, and you always had to pass by it. And so we had people by the end screaming and saying, take it down, I'll vote for you, but please take it down. But Joe, we're here to talk about you and 1994 and how 1994 changed so much for good or for ill, not only with the Republican Party, but with American politics. Talk about Republicans taking control for the first time in a generation.
Well, it was huge. I mean, we had one of the things that Newt and I talk about in the book are the efforts that had been made from 1968 forward in trying to elect majorities to the Congress, first to the Senate and then to the House. And we also recount our failures over the course of those years of, and particularly when Gingrich first came to Congress in 1978 and then all the way up to 1994. But we learned some things each time around in each election cycle. I was at the National Republican Congressional Committee as campaign director for 2 years and then executive director for 8 years. And we tried lots of different things and nothing ever seemed to work. But at least work in the way of electing a majority. But in 1994, remarkable things fell into place. And I talk about that in the appendix to the book, about things that are necessary for a majority to exist. One is, and this is really important for today as well, that candidates and parties really need to know what they're for, not necessarily always about what they're against, but what they're for and what they're going to do and how that's going to affect the lives of constituents. I pushed that very hard. The other thing about 1994 is the great work that Bill Paxton did as chairman of the NRCC in recruiting candidates everywhere. Joe, we had the highest number of candidates for Congress that we've ever had. 432 were running in 1994. The third thing was to train those candidates in some way so that they understood what the Contract for America was all about and what it was that we were going to do if we were elected. And we were really quite specific that says, if we don't bring these 10 items to vote in the first 100 days of the Congress, fire us and elect somebody else.
Right.
And that contract was much more specific than anything that had ever been done in the past. And then finally, you build the resources of time, money, and people and use them wisely. And frankly, we had some help because the opposition was kind of screwed up as well.
Yeah, you know, Joe, the thing is, there are a lot of people that are watching right now. Obviously, a lot of people that are watching aren't fans of Newt Gingrich, aren't fans particularly of the contract with America, but for anybody, and that's why this book is so important, whether you're a Democrat, whether you're a Republican, whatever party you're running, I have often asked myself year after year, election cycle after election cycle, why parties didn't do what you did in '94. Before I went out on the campaign trail, there was, this is how old we all are, there's a fax. You pick it up. And it wasn't like a policy paper with 12 things. There were facts, there were poll numbers, there was suggested language. I would pick it up, I'd run out, I'd look at it, and I'd find one or two things, you know, that's pretty good. I'd put it down. There were campaign schools, again, campaign schools that candidates and campaign managers went to that 30 years later, I can tell you exactly what I learned. It was so organized. And most importantly, the contract with America, which, of course, you say it, a lot of people get angry with it. Most of those items were supported by 70% of Americans and Democrats. For most of those items, the majority of Democrats voted for those items. The power of a simple message saying, this is what we're going to do. If we don't, fire us. That was just an unbeatable message, and I don't know why more people haven't used that message since.
I can't figure that out either, but that's one of the reasons why people should read March to the Majority. I think it's it was fun to work on. It was fun to remember and reminisce with Newt, and it was fun to do the research to put the facts together. But having a program and what you are for makes a huge difference. And the results in 1994 speak to that. We had 6 million more voters that voted for Republican candidates for Congress than ever in the history of the country. And part of that was because we were so direct on what we were going to do, and we were so specific about, if we didn't do it, get rid of us. I mean, people still have this feeling right now about, gee, there are some things that we need to do. There are some things that have to happen. I'm saying that in this book, March to the Majority, which we are thrilled, by the way, that it is is a top 20 bestseller right now in the nonfiction category based on Publishers Weekly. So we're thrilled about the acceptance of the book, but it's really got some helpful hints about both our stories and what we did. Newt was doing pretty much of the inside the Congress and what that was like. My writing in the book was about what was going on in the political world and how it is that we tried to affect all of the change that came about. It was a great effort by both of us, and we're very proud of the book.
So, Joe, certainly Newt Gingrich, a very strong speaker, at least initially. Let's get your assessment, though, of the current speaker, Kevin McCarthy, who, of course, it did take 15 ballots for him to claim that title. He got kudos for shepherding through the budget deal. But in the wake of that debt deal with President Biden, is facing a real rebellion from some of the far-right members of his caucus. Give us your assessment of the work, how he's been doing so far, whether you think he can tame that fringe.
I think Speaker McCarthy gets high marks so far for what he's been able to do. You know, he is a great student of politics. He came from the very rough and tumble system in California, where he, was minority leader. He understands leadership. He understands one of the things that he understands is one of the points that I make in the book about understanding where people are coming from and how you try to unlock them as opposed to get into a fight with them. And that's a very encouraging sign that I see in Speaker McCarthy. You know, he's got a tough row. There's no question. It's a narrow majority. It's narrower than it should have been, in my judgment. But, you know, he did an enormous amount of work raising money for candidates and campaigning all across the country and building the Commitment to America program. My own view on that was that, you know, there were 150 items in it, and I think it could have been a little briefer. But in any event, I think he's doing a good job so far, and he has a heck of a hard job to do.
The new book is March to the Majority, the real story of the Republican Revolution. Joe Gaylord, thank you very much for coming on the show this morning.
Thank you.
Congratulations on the book.
Thank you so much, Joe.